And let me say welcome again to the Stratosphere Lounge. Used to be that I had to push three buttons, which was pretty much beyond my ability. Now I have one button. Now I have to push three of them. So before we go any further, let me just tell you what the situation here looks like in terms of the technical things. We had so many technical issues last week, I just couldn't bear it, and I flew the coop. Um, Here's the situation. Ustream no longer supports the plan I used to have. Might as well just get into the weeds on this for a little bit so that everybody, has a sense of what's actually, going on here. So here's the deal. Since we've been doing the show, there was a basic plan for Ustream, which was basically, it was free, and because it was free, it included ad time. And we went a bunch of episodes with the ads, and everybody was, pretty upset about those ads, me included, because I would get interrupted in the middle of a thought myself. Then we figured out the wonders of ad blockers, so that worked out really well for a couple years, almost, I guess. Then what happened, I find, is that Ustream no longer offers that option. So I can stream at no cost to five people, or I can go to their Pro plan. And here's the problem with the Pro plan: it's $99 a month, which I'd be happy to pay, delighted to pay. And if it was $99 a month and included the ads and we were back where we were before, I would pay that too. But it's set up so that you get 500 viewer hours. So if I have, let's say, 200 viewers, a 2-hour show once a week, like that's ever going to happen. But let's just say it did. That's 1,600 viewer hours, and everything beyond the first 500, I pay 50 cents on. So I could be looking at, thousands of dollars a month, or if I had a really popular show, or so on. So here's what I'm doing right now. I have the Wirecast to Ustream will let me stream but not record, and it also lets me do things like the walk-in music with Petunia and all the rest of the stuff, which I think is a real important part of the show. But in order to get this going, here's what I've had to do. I've had to use Wirecast to stream the pre-show, and then I have to stop Wirecast, and then I have to go to the web-based crummy version that they use for free broadcasting, which is what you're watching now. And since I had to do that anyway, this time I've decided to do what we do for Right Angle, which is to capture video, which is getting written to my computer, and it'll be at 720. So for those few people who watch the show live, it looks worse. But if you're going to be watching on YouTube, which is where most of the views are, it should look considerably better. Although I can't put any, excuse me, can't put any graphics in here this way. I could, but then that's just a lot of time. So we'll see. Our friend Vipercheck says this needs to move to Twitch. I would be completely in favor of that. And last week and a couple times before that, I spent 20-30 minutes fooling around with this trying to get it to work. Today I spent 2.5 hours fooling around with it trying to get it to work. It's not working. And so Twitch might be a good option. We'll find something, I guess. In any event, should be the same on YouTube as in its regular place. So we'll figure that out. The one final thing is if this file is incredibly... Well, I just paid for this gigantic internet upgrade, which is worth it considering the size files we have to move. We have the editing done off-site here for Right Angle and things. So, Anyway, we're recording here, so I know it'll at least be on YouTube on the DV, the movie file we're recording with QuickTime, and I know that it's going out live now because I can hear people complaining, and I suspect it's being recorded onto Ustream as well, but at the lower resolution with the crummy web-based broadcaster. So that's that. And and IBM now, it's Ustream is IBM Video Cloud, whatever. And I won't be participating, I'm afraid, in the IBM cloud video. I never particularly liked the Ustream software, to say the least, but there's something about IBM that just feels so, I don't know. I would think, and live YouTube streaming may be a better idea, River City. So we're going to have to do something new, but I didn't have time to really look into it. I've been traveling like a crazy man for the last 2 weeks. So we're leaving again tomorrow for Minnesota for 2 days, and we're back, and hopefully we'll find a more permanent solution after that. So a bunch of stuff been going on. Talk about that a little bit before we move to the questions. It's just so weird now because I'm like looking at, I've got 4 or 5 different feeds going. I hope I'm recording on all of them, but there you go. So I was in Colorado Springs 10 days ago, not even, maybe a week ago, something like that. And then, so I had that on the books for a while, and I had the Minnesota trip, which is tomorrow, on the books for the while. And then I got a last-minute invitation to go to kind of this mini conference in Hawaii, and that's someplace I've never been. And so Natasha and I decided that we would make it our birthday presents. So we went to Hawaii, hung out with Evan Sayet and a bunch of other really smart people, and had some interesting discussions about a bunch of interesting things. It was great to get to know Evan better than I had. I'd known him relatively well, but we got to spend 2 or 3 days together. And he's a brilliant guy and a funny guy. There's actually, I think one of the high points of the trip was for about an hour, Evan Sayet and I got a chance to talk about writing television. That's an odd thing to be able to say, but it was really fun to sit there and talk about writing for Cheers and writing for, I wrote spec scripts for Cheers. Nothing I ever did got on the air. But Evan's written for Johnny Carson. He's written for David Letterman. He's written for lots and lots of people. And it was fun talking about being comedy writers, although he's a professional and I'm just play one on the internet. We talked about a bunch of things, and this is the big idea. I think it's a good thing to like to talk about something major before we get into the questions. So last week we recorded Stratosphere Lounge. Right Angles, and I recorded my right angle about Diamond and Silk being kicked off of Facebook. Earlier that day, I'd have a conversation with somebody who knows what's going on in this business on the inside a lot better than I do. And they said that a major aggregator, I won't say the name because it's all anecdotal, I can't back these numbers up, but sounds right. A major conservative website had a staff of 63. In November, they took them all down to the Bahamas because they were doing such a great job and the revenues were great and they were getting lots and lots and lots of views. So that was in November of 2017. In February of 2018, just a couple months ago, Facebook changed their algorithms again, and I heard that they went from 63 employees in January to 7 employees in March. And when I'd seen and heard this news, I actually decided not to run that right angle because, to be honest with you, it was too much of a hair on fire kind of thing. It was, I want to say almost panicked. It was as close to panicking as I've been and not, panicked. But I was plenty worried. And I'm still plenty worried. And the reason I'm plenty worried is because this certainly is the left making a full court press. They're trying to. This is their end game. At least this is what they think is their end game, and whether it is their end game or not is going to depend on how we respond to it. But What I think is happening is they know that they're losing some stock market price, and they know that they're taking some bad publicity, and Mark Zuckerberg has to spend a couple of uncomfortable minutes under the gaze of Ted Cruz and so on. And I think that Facebook and Google, YouTube, but Facebook especially, are willing to do this. And this is what I think they're doing. I think it's like a human wave assault. They're just going to take their losses to overrun the position. They know it's going to be costly to overrun the position, but they figure if we swarm the conservatives and we do all this illegal, immoral, horrible PR stuff and shut every single one of them down, we'll take a PR hit and a financial hit, and then in a year, people won't remember anything, and we'll own all the information conduits. And I suspect that what has happened is it took them about a year to understand that the election actually happened and that it happened. It took about a year to sink in, I think. But in February of 2018, they have not just been suppressing videos and stuff. They're simply choking them out, and we're all feeling it, and we're all in big trouble financially, with the exception of Daily Wire, who's a brilliant business plan and is basically advertising based and so on. But in any event, lots and lots of people are really feeling it. And I started hearing about this from Alfonso Rachel, who I saw a month ago. And Zoe's working, as a Uber driver and stuff out in 29 Palms, because all of his fans said, "I thought you died. We hadn't heard from you. Why did you stop doing the videos?" Well, they suppressed Zoe probably even more than they suppressed me, because Zoe is so deadly dangerous to them. But just to give you an idea, because it doesn't really sink in, I have about 167,000 Facebook followers as I write this, and over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. And I'll post a video, just a short little 1 minute or 2 minute video, and it'll be seen by 7,000 people. Prager University said that their videos were going out to 2% of their total audience. 2%. So it's dire. And I am going to do a firewall about this. I don't know if it'll be the next one or the one after that, but I'm going to call it the Facebook trap. And here's basically the idea. When I got started in this, last month, December of 2002, so really 2003, was the time of the blogs, golden era of blogs. And that's how I met Steve Green and Scott Ott. Steve had Vodka Pundit, Scott had Scrappleface, and we all knew each other, and we depended on aggregator sites like Instapundit and Little Green Footballs before Charles Johnson went barking mad and all the rest to get us some traffic. But we weren't monetizing the traffic. We just liked the attention, I guess. And that was fine because the internet is uncontrollable. Search engines can be controlled. Certainly Facebook and YouTube can be controlled, but the internet is virtually uncontrollable. So what that means is if you want to go to billwhittle.com and you type billwhittle.com into your web browser, there's virtually nothing they can do to stop you from doing that. So I had felt from the time I started writing Eject that we may be able to break this cycle of civilization, this collapse, because of the internet, because for the first time in human history, there was a chance for regular people to talk to each other directly without going through the priesthood of, the Democratic Party and CNN and all these newspaper editors and our moral and intellectual superiors like the Kardashians and all the rest of it. We had a chance to just talk to regular people like regular people, and I thought that might be a game changer rather. The reason I'm scared now, and was very scared a couple weeks ago, feeling better now about this since this last idea, is because we made a fatal error. Well, we might have made a fatal error. We, without question, made a serious critical error. And here's what the error was. Starting around 5 or 7, 8 years ago, something like that, when Facebook really started to take off, everybody realized that what Facebook was it was an internet within the internet. And it was a place where anybody could go and get most of what they wanted from the internet. you get news stories linked there, and you would get, you get to see how your niece is doing and all the rest of it. So it was very convenient. And that's why, Tide Detergent has a Facebook page, and gee, I wonder what's going on with, my Midas muffler Facebook page. Everybody's on Facebook because everybody's on Facebook. But we didn't recognize what the trap of this was. And the trap of it was that we were going from an unregulated information medium to one that is privately owned and strictly controlled. And so conservatives, among everybody else in the country, spent millions and millions of dollars on advertising to build up Facebook followers. And as we became more effective, the progressives that run Facebook and YouTube and Google owns YouTube, got more and more nervous about this, so they started to slowly use algorithms, mathematical formulas to make sure we got seen by fewer and fewer people. But then Donald Trump got elected, and once that sunk in, I'm pretty sure they decided the reason Trump was elected was because some alternate form of the story was allowed to get out. They're still talking about Hillary Clinton's emails in Benghazi, those knuckle-dragging savages out there in flyover country who apparently still have a vote. We'll try and get rid of the Electoral College as soon as we can to make sure that doesn't happen either. But I think basically all of these tech geniuses and the progressives got together and said, we lost the last election because we lost let's face facts. Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump because of BillWhittle.com. I think it's pretty much beyond any rational form of discussion or argumentation. And I'm willing to concede that a few other sites like maybe Drudge or Daily Wire or, Levin or Crowder or Beck or Rush or maybe Fox and all, Hannity may have had some other minor contribution to make. But terrestrial radio and television is going out of business. Nobody's watching it anymore. And I'm quite convinced that they've said to themselves, we are not going to lose another election because we're not going to let people hear the other side of the story. And so what they have been doing in the last couple months since February is so egregious and so open and so shameless that, like I said, I think they're just decided they're going to take a pounding, close us down, and then after that people will forget. And that's why I was scared for the first time ever in this job. I've been discouraged before, I've been depressed before, but this was the first time I was scared because, Sabo's Twitter account, gone. Diamond and Silk's Facebook account, gone. All of the followers that they built up and paid Facebook to build up, by the way, gone. And videos that I post are seen by 7,000 people when 167,000 people have signed up to specifically see the videos. And so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Now, here's what happened when we were in Hawaii. I'm going to use the name of a company, and I'm going to talk about it as if it is the candidate, but with the caveat in advance that there may be better candidates than this. So one of the people there at this mini conference talked to me about a site called MeWe. It's advertising itself as the second generation social media site. I don't know whether they're run by conservatives or not, but MeWe is promoting itself. Its entire reason for being there, its entire ad campaign is, MeWe says, we don't own your information. You own your information. It's none of our business. We don't track it. We don't mine it. We don't sell it. We don't record the stuff that you do, and we don't censor anything you do. We're the anti-Facebook. That's what this social media site called MeWe is advertising. And again, for the sake of the discussion, for the time being, I'm going to take them at their word. So, for years, people have been saying, well, why don't we get a conservative Facebook? And why don't we get a conservative Twitter? And why don't we get a conservative YouTube? And my answer has always been because no one will go to it. I'm not going to go to a conservative YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, but mostly I like to watch user-generated content. And a lot of times I'm on Facebook because I want to see what my family and friends are doing. So the trap is, and the big mistake is, that all of the conservative commentary has become so married to both Facebook and YouTube and they are both private companies. Whether they have the legal or moral right to do it, they certainly have the physical right to do it. So we all put all of our eggs in two baskets, and then the left basically crunched the baskets. And now we have to get what's left out of those baskets. So what I'm proposing is, I'm proposing, and this is the point. It can't just be BillWhittle.com. It just can't be an idea I have. This has to be an across-the-board agreement with every single conservative commentator. And I think we could probably get that consensus because it doesn't change anybody's advantage or disadvantage. But what I would like to do is I would like to start a cultural move to MeWe or whatever. But for the time being, we'll just say it's MeWe. What I mean by that is I'm not going to just encourage you to go to the MeWe page. I think, given the fact that any message I send out goes to 2% of my total listener base, that this has to be something that's accomplished in the space of 3 or 4 weeks, and it has to be included everywhere. Rush needs to talk about it. Hannity needs to talk about it. Daily Wire needs to talk about it. I need to talk about it. Everybody needs to talk about it. And it needs to be a movement in the same way that, Never Again and March for Our Lives, this kind of thing. It needs to be a movement. It needs to happen quickly because if it doesn't, network effect is going to happen and it's just going to dry up. If we went to this alternate site piecemeal, we'd go there. We wouldn't see any content. We'd just stop going. It's got to be a colonization effort. It's actually more like a lifeboat. It really, to me, feels like, I hadn't thought about this before, but it really is like, when worlds collide, it's like we have to get out of here. We have to get out of where we are. It's not a question of someday. It's happening now. They're shutting us down now. Everybody's feeling it. My revenues are way down. Everybody's revenues are way down. If I didn't have a membership base who believed in me despite all of my failings in terms of consistency and so on, I would have been gone a long time ago. And by the way, that membership base is immune to what Facebook and Google decide you should hear and not hear. They can control whether or not you hear it on Facebook and Google and YouTube, but they can't put me out of business as long as I have a member base. So I think this thing needs to happen quickly, and I think it needs to be a thing. And I think it needs the kind of publicity that you get when there's a thing. And I think we need to put all of our differences aside on this. I'd flip a coin. I don't care where it is. But the two things that would kill this idea would be if it happens so incrementally that there's no content for a while and the network is too small. And the other thing that would kill this idea would be if all of the conservatives decide to go to an alternate, instead of one alternate site, they go to 8 alternates. I like MeWe, I like Gab, I like this, I like mine. And big argument about where we go. And then the whole audience is split into different pieces. But I think we need to make a move while we still have a chance to get the message out to people somewhere. And it can't be something I do. A site of this size is an enormous software and hardware hurdle. And maybe it's not. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this was I want to have people come up with some suggestions about maybe where this is. But my point is, we need to move. And here's Vero. All right? I'm going to write that down there, Mr. Blake. And I'll take a look at that in a minute. So Vero, MeWe, whatever. I'm going to go with MeWe because that's just the name I had in my head. And I knew there would be better candidates. I'll take a look at it. So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Sometimes the simple thing is the hardest thing to see. And for me, I never thought this would work because I could not imagine people giving up Facebook to go to something like this, which is essentially going to be a wasteland for a while. And then I realized that this was my big mistake. And the assumption I made was that people would leave Facebook. They don't have to leave Facebook. So the way this model would work would be like this. We'd continue to post on Facebook and YouTube. And we would also include links to the MeWe post or wherever it goes. And we would basically say, oh, by all means, keep your Facebook page. See how your nephew and niece is going. But if you want to actually hear the news you think you're getting, you need to check this page once a day or once every other day, because this is where the stuff actually is uncensored. And And I think just the act of it, and this is the part where the showmanship comes in. The act of it is the thing. It's got to be a social thing, or else it's just another, little idea. But if half the country got up and moved because we were sick and tired of being censored and paying money so that we could be censored, and making billionaires out of these people so that they could censor us, and we would continue to post on Facebook, we'd continue to post on YouTube, but we would also post on MeWe, and we'd also post on Vimeo or Twitch or whatever. And Cranky T-Rex says the only way to work is if somebody's going to flush a ton of money into it. We can't flush it. There is no ton of money to be flushed into it. That's a whole nother discussion. It can't take a ton of money. It just has to be something that rings a bell like everybody, and have them go, yeah, okay, this is a good idea. And anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. And it gives you the sense that it is almost like the Oklahoma Territory. Everybody's in their Conestoga wagons whipping their horses, trying to get there as fast as possible. Who was that who just made that comment? I want to get the name because it's an interesting point. Dave Wellman says that we shall not vacate the battlefield. Well, Dave, I'm not talking about vacating the battlefield, but I am saying that if Facebook is the battlefield, then the battlefield has vacated us whether we like it or not. It's not a question of effort. It's not a question of content. It's a question of we are handing a letter to a mailman whose job is to burn the letter. So we need, I think, a universal aggregator where people can go and have the same experience that they get. And the final note I'll make about this particular subject is I think you would basically say to the existing followers and subscribers and all the rest of it, we've been talking an awful lot about shadow banning of our content, and you probably think that means that, okay, you're not getting the Prager videos or the Bill Whittle videos or the Daily Wire videos that you signed up for. But it's worse than that because of two things. First of all, your friends and relatives are not getting the posts that you make. You, just regular Joe citizen, you put up a Facebook post talking about how awesome Donald Trump is or how much you love this country. It'll be suppressed in the same way that our messages are suppressed. So you will be free to receive and give, an actual free opinion in a way that you are not now. You send a post out there, you post it. You've got 100 family members or 500 or whatever. You say, oh, Donald Trump's doing a great job. You think it goes to 500 people. It doesn't. It probably goes to 20 people. And that's not fair. And it gives us the illusion of being in the fight when we aren't. We've been just choked out of it. And there's also, as a significant matter of stuff that's below the surface, it is an enormously discouraging strategy that they're using. And that's, I think, a big part of it is, Zoe was just heartbroken. He's just heartbroken, not even so much because of the loss of revenue. There's certainly that. He says, people think I died. People think I've just stopped making these videos. And when you see content that, 2-3 years ago was doing 700,000 views and now it does 20,000 views, it makes you feel like you're done. That nobody's interested in listening to me anymore and nobody really wants to hear this anymore. It is exceedingly demoralizing, which is a big part of it. And I think the main point here is it is almost unbearable for me to constantly run up against this what is our return on investment argument from conservative donors. It is, the part that makes this so tough is I understand it. I really do. I understand it. And And needless to say, I'm a champion of capitalism and reason and reality and all these things. These are the things that I promote. This is what I talk about. And so when you try to raise money for conservative ammunition in this fight, because this is where the fight is, they're not coming with guns, they're coming with stories. Try to raise ammunition for this, and you'll hear things like, well, I don't think it's a good fit for my company, or I can't really get the metrics, not really sure how much I'm getting for my dollar's worth, and so on. And these are unquantifiable qualities. We can't quantify them. How many people have been convinced that America's an awful country because they watch Family Guy for 20 years? How many, or 10 years or whatever, how many votes has The Simpsons changed? How many votes has Family Guy changed? There's no way to tell, but the answer is many. And you try to explain that, look, as far as the tea leaves show me, here's what the future looks like. You either give the people who are on the lines of this battle, on the story battle, the narrative battle, because they're not coming for your money with guns. They're going to vote your money away. They're going to vote your money away. They're not coming at you with tanks to take away your house. They're going to take away your house through votes. They're just going to confiscate it through votes, through legislation. And we have to change the way people vote. And that means changing their minds. And that means that I'm the front line and not your AR-15. Don't sell the AR-15, by the way. So when we ask for ammunition, we don't get it. And so I have to explain why this is why your choice is basically this. The future is going to be one of two things. You can either part with some of your money now. You're not going to get a cash return on this. This is not an investment. It's a donation. Just face it. It's what it is. This is not an investment, and your accountant may not say it's a wise investment because it's not going to return any money. But you either make that investment now and give us the ammunition while there's still a fight to be had, or you don't. And if you don't, then you are defunding your military, and then you will lose all of your money. So I think that's pretty much it. You can lose a little money now, donate it to the cause of fighting this enormously wide and huge blue ocean that's exceedingly wide and a couple millimeters deep. Or you can just look for a good return on investment, and by all means do that, because that just means that you're going to have a little more money for the Occupy Wall Street savages when they come and take your stuff. Since I can't add graphics into this, I'm sorry to have to do it this way, but it is an extremely potent reminder of where we are. So I'll use this to tell you a story, and then we'll do a couple questions. I've shown it a few times before, but if you haven't seen it, what I'm about to show you is an electoral map of the United States. This is what the United States election results would look like if the election were held tomorrow and if only millennials voted. Republicans capture Utah with its 6 electoral votes, I think that is. Yep. And the Democrats get everything else. And they win the election 532 electoral votes to 6. This isn't a projection. This isn't a worst-case scenario. This is not me trying to scare you into what the world would look like if you don't become a member at BillWhittle.com. None of that nonsense. According to polling data over multiple sources, this is what the country looks like right now for millennials and younger. This is the country we live in right now. So my question is, why is this map so blue? Let me just get it in there so you can see just how much blue there is on that blue map there. Why is it blue? Is it blue because this is such a tremendously popular political philosophy? Is it blue because it's all about freedom and a better life for people? No, it's none of those things. Is it blue because it's more fun? No, it's a lot less fun. It's a lot less of everything. It's a much worse place. But it's blue, folks. The answer to your question is very simple. The reason this map is blue is because the left paid for it to be blue. And when I say paid for it, I mean they put in the work, yes, but they really, really put in the money. And this is something that I simply cannot convince conservatives of. But let me give you a try here, because I need to sharpen this pitch and just keep going at it. I will tell you a story now that it's all over, and I think it's an interesting story because I think it does show what you buy when you buy influence, when you pay money for people like me. Here's how it works. George Soros recently moved, was it 12 or 14 billion dollars into the Soros Foundation, and that $14 billion joins a previous 12 or something like that. And it was something like 25, 26 billion dollars that one person, that's not Zuckerberg and it's not Bezos and it's not Hollywood, it's none of them. It's just one guy has put $25,000 million into various social change activities. Hollywood makes movies that tell people how to vote, comedy, music, put all that aside. Let's just look at George Soros. So George Soros puts $25 billion into these cultural things. And a Republican would ask, well, what is his return on investment? And up until now, I would have said, well, it's a blue map, but that doesn't make any sense to conservatives. But this probably will. What does George Soros get for his $25 billion? Well, property taxes in Illinois are now 3 or 4 times what they were before. And people are selling their houses because they can't pay the property taxes, and they're selling them for half of what they're worth or a third. So there's an enormous flood of money coming into the socialists in the state government of Illinois because property taxes have tripled or quadrupled in the last 10 years. That's an enormous source of money. Huge. And they plan to do the same thing everywhere. So where's Soros's money come into this? Well, here's how it works. Among the many things, 125, 130 things that George Soros puts money into, is an organization called Media Matters. And Media Matters is founded by a guy who's certifiably insane. I mean, I'm not just my opinion. I mean, the guy's been like hauled away in a straitjacket kind of thing. And Media Matters' job is to hire people to look at what every single conservative commentator says and then find a way to skewer that person, to destroy them if they can, using their own words. So there's probably 5,000 hours, more or less, of me speaking just openly about what I think. There's probably 5,000 hours of me speaking my mind on the internet. And Media Matters was paid by Soros to have people go through pretty much everything I've said. And they got a hold of this interview I did with Stefan Molyneux where we were discussing the bell curve. And we were discussing a book, and we were discussing the premises in the book. And while we were discussing the premises in the book, I stated some of the premises in the book, and then those direct quotes were used as if it was my opinion. So what does that have to do with billions and billions of dollars in property taxes that the government and big state gets? Well, here's how it works. 3-4 months ago, in Florida, I met a person I like very, very much. He's a conservative soldier. He's one of the best people I ever met. He's an enormously big-hearted guy. And I admire him enormously. And he asked me, we weren't very good friends at the time, he said, hey, I did a significant amount of work to get the current governor of Illinois, Rautner, elected because he was a conservative, and he came over to my house and he talked about all the conservative things he was going to do. So I went to a lot of trouble, spent a lot of money to get him elected. And we got him elected. We got a Republican elected in Illinois. And once he got into office, he started to sign legislation that was worse than the most progressive Democrats that we've seen. And he kept doing it. He turned Illinois into sanctuary state, and he let those property taxes continue to rise, and kept signing those bills. He signed public funding for abortion up until, birth bills, these kind of things. And he said, I've had enough of it, you're not the person you said you were, and I'm going to support a challenger. So he contacted me and he asked me if I would be willing to come out to Illinois and support this challenger named Jeanne Ives. And this challenger, I'm told, was a real fighter, real heroic. She had gone to West Point. She had 4 kids in the military, was married to a military guy. She turned down pensions that she was entitled to as a state legislator because the state didn't have any money and so on. I said, that's it, man. That's exactly the kind of person that I want to be associated with. I'm in. I'm happy to do it. And without having ever met this person, I put my name and my reputation and my face on promotional material for Jeanne Ives. 3 weeks before a fundraiser was going to be held in Illinois that I was not just the featured speaker on, I was the guy. And I used my name and influence to try and get as many people out to this fundraiser as possible. So we fly out, Natasha and I fly out to Illinois the day before the event, and then the day of the event, we get to the venue about an hour and a half before it's supposed to start. And about 45 minutes before the event, the person who invited me gets a text, and he texts back, and he gets another text, and he gets up and walks away for a while. Okay. And he's gone for quite a while, 20 minutes, something like that. And he comes back to the table, and here's what he says. He says, I've just been talking to the Ives campaign, and they tell me that they cannot come to this fundraiser if you're going to be there. What's that? They said that Jeanne cannot come to this event if you're going to be there. I'm just completely mystified. And then they elaborate and say that somebody had sent the Ives campaign a Media Matters article on me that was done maybe a year earlier, a little less than a year earlier, where they called me an academic racist and a white supremacist, based on an interview I did with Stefan Molyneux, where we were talking about the bell curve. And of the 5,000 hours of times me talking about anything on the internet has been out there, they were able to find some quotes from one interview that I did with another guy who did most of the talking. And they put these quotes together in such a way that it made me sound like a white supremacist and a racist. So I said, look, can I just talk to somebody here? I can just show you videos that I do with black conservatives, with friends and people. It's obvious how much I respect them and so on. But she wouldn't meet with me because that would be, terrible, obviously. And I met with 2 of her campaign people. We were in a small room, and I sat down and I started to pull out my defense here, and they said, these 2 guys said, look, Bill, we know you're not a racist, but did you say that black people are unemployed and unemployable? I said that the dependency strategy of absolutely destroying inner cities, making people dependent on the government, means that they end up unemployed and unemployable. But I said it made them unemployed and unemployable because of a policy that's been put on them from above. I didn't say that they were naturally unemployed or unemployable, but I did say that. They said, did you say that black people are lazy? I said, what I said was that black people have become dependent on the government. Dependency makes you lazy, and that's not what they quoted me as saying, because it's not even just dependency makes you lazy that I said. When I went back and looked at the actual transcript, what I said was, dependency makes you lazy, comma, and I ought to know because I was dependent on my friends for many years on their largesse, and I was lazy, bitter, angry, and miserable. In other words, my so-called supremacist position that this race is lazy, in the same sentence, I said that I understand this phenomenon because it happened to me over the space of 10 years. That's what they did. So, in any event, I'm talking to these 2 guys, and like I said, they said, we know you're not a racist. I said, look, guys, I'm just here to help the candidate, okay? I don't care. I'm here for this guy. who's a wonderful guy. I'll do anything for him. So I'll sit this one out, no problem. I'll just sit down in the golf simulator room at this golf course and start smacking golf balls at a video screen for a while. And they said, okay, we'll just pretend it didn't happen. Fine. Okay, fine. So I go down to there. The fundraiser goes on. So a lot of people ask where I am. Some people get up and leave when they find out I'm not there, but they do the fundraising. They raise some money. And as we're walking out to the car, a guy who helped me with this suddenly started cursing. And I said, what? He said he was looking at the Jeanne Ives campaign Facebook page. And prior to meeting with me, the Ives campaign said, we utterly denounce the racist comments made by Bill Whittle. We've taken down all of the promotional materials that he's done for us. We had no idea that he held these inexcusable views. And we not only do not have anything to do with him, he was not at the fundraiser. Jeanne Ives has severed all ties with this horrible white supremacist. And that really hurt and pissed me off quite a bit. The next day I wake up, thank God for Natasha because I don't know what I would have done without her, but the next day I wake up and that same social media guy named Josh Firestein, who came to my rescue and for whom I'm extremely grateful, was defending me left and right. He said, how you feeling? I said, I'm marginally better than yesterday. He says, well, you might want to sit down. I said, okay. And he hands me his phone where he's done screen grabs. And the Charlotte Observer and the Chicago Tribune and the Los Angeles Times and all of these screen grabs that say GOP challenger cancels event with white supremacist Bill Whittle. And when I saw those things, you get anybody, I don't know if you've ever had that kind of shock where you feel, it's like metallic taste in your mouth. Something happens to your nervous system. It's not just like a shock. It's like a sensation. And I've used this expression 100 times, and so are you, but I never meant it because I never really understood it. But the truth is, I wanted to crawl under a rock and die. I just wanted to go crawl under a rock. I wanted to go away, a long way away, and never be seen again. I didn't want to fight about it, didn't want to argue about it. It's in 60 newspapers. AP picked it up, I already have enough trouble with these college students, and now it's news. Now it's in the newspaper, so it's got to be true. And it took me probably 3 or 4 hours before I had the even emotional strength to look at some of the things that I'd said about this. And as I started reading some of my quotes and things from transcripts from Stratosphere Lounge and so on, I actually felt this enormous sigh of relief because if you have a conscience, you say to yourself, have I become this? Is this what I am? Have I become a racist because of all this stuff that's going on? And then I started reading about all the times I said things like, the Tuskegee Institute, and I started talking about all the times I said that this proves that if you hold people to higher standards, they'll rise to higher standards. And I've said 50 times in public that that I think Booker T. Washington's one of the 3 greatest Americans that ever lived, and so on and so on and so on. And I come back to LA 2 days after I get back. I was scheduled to have a panel discussion at Cal Poly, but the Democratic Student Society and the Muslim Student Society both pulled out of that because I was going to be there. And they tried to scramble to get me on with somebody else, but I said, I'm not gonna come to this event after people have basically said, no, we're pulling out because of this. I'm not going to come begging back here and argue with these people. It's not going to be about the media anymore. It's all going to be about me. It's going to be me defending myself against 4 other people on a panel, an entire hostile group of people who don't listen and never have. So that cost me a significant amount of money. A couple of other events cost me a significant amount of money, and a couple of events started saying, we don't know if we can go through with this and continue to have you come and be the host of this event or whatever. Shortly after this, I went to an event in Tucson, and the event went very well. And after it was over, I went up to the organizer of the event and I said, I want to thank you for sticking with me. That really means a lot to me, especially right now. And he said, look, Bill, we'd all heard about it and we'd all gotten emails about it, and there was some concern about it. There was a little froth going on. But 3 or 4 of the organizers of the event and I sat down and we looked at the Stefan Molyneux interview that they referenced, and we could tell in 3 minutes that this was a fake news story, that there was nothing to it. We could tell within 5 minutes that there's nothing racist at all about what you were saying. So, well, I thanked him for going to the trouble of doing that. So here's my point. Jeanne Ives lost the primary by 2 percentage points. And I suspect that if I'd been doing the messaging that I thought I was going to be doing, as well as the social media magic that this other guy, Josh, was capable of pulling off, I think there's a very good chance that we could have won that election. Because I had some really, really different out-of-the-box ideas. And this seemed like the right candidate. So when people say, well, where's my return on investment? The answer is this. George Soros puts $22 billion or $26 billion on the table. Part of that money goes to Media Matters. Media Matters smears me. The conservative challenger in Illinois distances me, which is what made it a news story, by the way. It wasn't a news story that Media Matters put this thing out. Media Matters is Media Matters. But when the Republican conservative challenger calls me a white supremacist and distances themselves from me publicly, denounces me, that's news. So George Soros put down money that took me out of this fight and some other capable people out of this fight, that since it was a 2-point loss, I believe we could have won. And if we'd had another 6 months to convince the rest of people in Illinois, we could have won the general too, I think. So for his $22 billion, one of the many things that George Soros gets, including the Congress, the House of Representatives are going to get in November, that's one of the things he bought. But he bought continuation of this 3 or 4 times higher property taxes in Illinois, which is billions and billions and billions of dollars. And that's how it works. So that's it. If it had gone differently, you could foresee a world where she gets this memo and decides to trust the people that brought her in here. She'd seen my work over the years. She maybe, instead of being such a coward, she decides, okay, well, I haven't seen anything about this guy that makes me nervous, so she could have gone, and the press release could have been this. The press release could have been Bill Whittle, who is a kind and gentle person, doesn't have a mean bone in his body, is being maliciously slandered in order to take him away from my campaign because they know he's a danger to them. And so he's been slandered by Media Matters, and he's slandered in the same way that Rush Limbaugh is slandered, and Donald Trump is slandered, and Glenn Beck is slandered, and everybody's slandered. The way I've been slandered, the way I'm going to be slandered, and so on. So instead of me doing this and backing down to these low-life, miserable bastards, we're going to make it a campaign issue. This is how the left destroys people, by telling lies about them to get them to shut up. And Jeanne Ives, I'm not going to shut up. I'm immune to this. I don't care what they call me. If she had actual courage, that's what she would have done, something like that. But she didn't. She ran, and that's that. And the little follow-up to this story is simply this. About a month after this incident, the Ives campaign ran an ad, which I hadn't heard about until much, much later. I certainly wouldn't have done this, but nevertheless, about a month after this, the Ives campaign ran an ad where they had like a Muslim thanking Governor Rautner for this, and an illegal alien dressed like a Mexican, I guess, thanking Governor Rautner for making it a sanctuary state. And immediately upon the release of this ad, the left pounced all over it and said how unbelievably racist it was. But the kind of ironic boomerang here is, so did the Republicans. The Republicans in the state of Illinois came down and said, this is a horribly racist thing. We have nothing to do with it, completely distance ourselves from it. And I remember hearing this story after the election was over, I think, but if not shortly before. And I remember thinking, how does this feel, Jeannie? You know, how do you like it? You know, you're there trying to save poor people because the government is stealing all of this money, and Chicago's the murder capital of the world, and you think you're going in there to try and do something about it. And imagine my surprise when you find out that the left is fighting dirty with you. And now you've been smeared as a racist, not only by the left, but you've also been smeared as a racist by the people who are on your own team. How does that feel? Do you like it? Because I didn't like it very much at all. So that's where George Soros' money goes. And we have not yet seen the beginning of what this blue wave is going to do when it's coming. It's going to be overwhelming. And this is why they tried to shut us down on Facebook and all the rest. So, that's the world we live in, and we have to start making serious efforts to do something about it. I don't know what to say beyond that. They're shutting us up, they're shutting us down, and they are also controlling the information that that we could use to win this fight. So, and this is the last thing I'll say on this particular subject. We'll take a few questions. I can't be here too late. I've got a couple of right-angle thumbnails I need to do before I go home, and I'm leaving again tomorrow. But basically, there's one more thing I want to say about this. I spent a lot of time, obviously, this last year working on these video game things and these computer graphic things, and I know a lot of people have thought that was a misuse of my time, and as it turns out, it probably was a misuse of my time. But let me just tell you why I wanted to do those things and why I'm going to continue to do them, but I'm going to do them in my spare time instead of my prime time. This is our country now. It's not our country someday. This is what our country is now. Most of the people that support the work I do want me to continue to make videos for the red square. And I think I need to be making videos for the blue ocean. But I can't convince people of this, at least not so far. So I'm going to continue to make videos that conservatives want to see, but basically I'm going to be continuing to make videos for a shrinking red dot. As the country gets older, that red square gets smaller, and pretty soon it'll be an all blue country. And I'll continue to make these videos for this red square. But that's not where we need to be. You know? It's not where we need to be. Because that map is painted blue from coast to coast, but it's so thin. And so Cheryl says she's glad to hear it. I assume she's glad to hear that we're going to continue to make more videos for people that don't need to hear the videos. And spend less time working on projects to show the people who do need to hear the videos the simple truth. And the simple truth is that this blue map is composed of people who I don't need to change their mind. I don't need to change their behaviors. They're already behaving like conservatives. I just have to show them. and tell them that what they're doing is behaving like conservatives. But now this is something I'm going to have to do in my part-time, and whether it gets there in time, I don't know. One thing I do know is this is the future. This is where the fight is. I'm tired of I'm tired of I'm tired of buying biplanes and muskets and bronze cannons on sailing ships. I'm tired of spending resources on those kind of weapons. I would really, really like to be able to buy stealth fighters and EMP weapons and adoptive camouflage and all that stuff. But everybody's convinced that you know, the Kaiser's going to be sailing his battle fleets over the Atlantic, so let's build some battleships before it's too late. And that's very disheartening. Anyway, that's been what's happening for the last couple of weeks. So I'll do, it's about 7:05, and I'll do questions to 7:30. I think it'll be an hour and a half, and then I'll hit the 7 stop buttons I have, and we'll upload the high-resolution version to YouTube. Okay, let's see what we got here. Come on, refresh button. Looking for the questions here, folks. Going as fast as I can. All right, here we go. Hey, look at that. Number one question belongs to Dave Olson yet again. So yesterday there was an engine failure on a jet airliner again, setting aside the iron spine of the pilot who outcooled Sully in her transmissions with ATC and sticking the landing. These kinds of engine failures seem to be happening a lot lately. I'm not sure if it's a newer, greener manufacturing or if concern with social justice is taking away time from quality control at GE, Pratt, and Rolls. What say you? I did not know it was a woman pilot on that flight. I just saw the story earlier, and good for her. I've often said things that basically I think make sense in terms of people's general inclinations. I think you find more men want to be pilots than women, and the idea of having an equal number of women pilots is not good for aviation because it means it means people who aren't as good aren't getting the jobs. But what I don't get to say as much as I would like is that to say that just because more men go into aviation doesn't mean there aren't excellent women pilots, including excellent women combat pilots, and I'm very happy, actually exceedingly happy, that Southwest flight was piloted by a woman, and I'm sure she did the same absolutely perfect professional job just like any of the other professionals. So first of all, congratulations to her, and well done. Secondly, I'm not aware of an increase in these kind of things. I don't see it. I haven't been looking for it, but I certainly haven't gotten the sense, Dave, that all of a sudden engines are exploding all over the place. The number of flight hours is increased enormously, and the more airplanes you fly, the more often this kind of thing is going to happen just by simple statistics. But I'm not aware of it. It doesn't seem to be an epidemic or anything of that nature that I can see. The thing I think that needs to be said is that the jet engine, with the possible exception of the electric motor, is the most reliable piece of heavy machinery that I think's ever been invented, by a large margin. I know I've mentioned this a few times before, but just think about it. In the end of the propeller-driven, piston-driven, propeller-driven airliners like the Stratocruiser, which my mom was a flight attendant on, or the Constellation, or any of these of the last of the big four-engine post-war prop-driven airliners. Every one of those four engines probably had over 1,000 moving parts. You had 18-cylinder Wright Cyclone engines with pistons and rods and pins and valves and superchargers and Unbelievable complexity. Plus, what you're asking it to do is you're asking an explosion to occur, not a burn, an explosion to occur to blast this steel cylinder some couple of inches in one direction, at which point it comes to a screeching halt and is immediately rammed back up again, and faces another explosion. And this is happening in 18 different places in one engine. And so that is not the kind of device that is going to last forever. That's why they had four-engine airliners. You had four engines because your chance of an engine failure was excellent. And your chance of a two-engine failure was actually pretty good. My mom was flying a Stratocruiser over the North Atlantic Ocean on Christmas Eve, and they lost three engines. And they can't hold altitude on one. And they were able to restart at 800 feet or something. Otherwise, it'd be somebody else doing the worst produced show on the internet. But the jet engine is an astonishing thing, and invented by a fellow named Frank Whittle, by the way. For those of you not familiar with it, I'm not going to go do a whole dissection of the jet engine, but one of the reasons that the jet engine is so effective in terms of power, it's very fuel thirsty compared to internal combustion engine. But an internal combustion engine, let's just say a Volkswagen Beetle, something simple like that, that's what kind of engines we have in general aviation, is just very simple. You open up a valve, air comes in, you squirt some gas in there, close the valve, light it, it explodes, it pushes this metal piston, some distance, and then bang, it comes again. But the power that's being generated by that explosion is limited not by the amount of gasoline you can put in there, but by the amount of oxygen that you can get into that cylinder. Only so much oxygen into that cylinder. So you can put all the fuel you want in there, but you're not going to increase the power because oxygen is the limitation. And as you get higher and higher in the sky, the air becomes less and less dense, so that in the time you can fill that cylinder, the air pressure around it is so low that you have even significantly less oxygen. Eventually a piston engine just won't climb anymore because the air is too thin for it to sustain itself. So some bright people got together and invented superchargers and turbochargers. Turbocharger uses a turbine at the back of the exhaust of a internal combustion engine to drive a compressor. That's a turbocharger. A supercharger just uses a regular motor, but both of them are doing the same thing. They're compressing the air somewhat so that when that compressed air gets into that cylinder, there's more oxygen available for the fuel, and you get a more energetic explosion and more power out of the engine. But the reason that jet engines are so effective is because the jet engine is essentially just a compressor. That's all it is, a flying compressor. The big blades you see on the outside are not really part of the compression mechanics of the jet engine. When you look at a modern high bypass jet engine, what you're looking at essentially is a turboprop with 30 blades. You're looking at a fan. It's a turbofan engine. The fan is what's moving most of the air. But inside the engine are a series of vanes that look a lot like the big ones you see on the outside. And these vanes turn, and as they turn, they run into counter vanes and so on, and it's extremely, extremely cleverly set up and very precise. But basically, the reason a jet engine is so effective is by the time they put the fuel in there and light it, the air is very compressed. And because the air is so compressed, it's got so much available oxygen that the burn per drop of fuel is much, much more energetic. So that's the big advantage of a jet engine, is the extra power. But the single great advantage of the jet engine is, instead of having every engine having 18 cylinders banging back and forth and all the valves and the rods, they're all operating thousands of times a minute and all the rest of it, instead of this flying contraption, you've got one moving part. Basically, it's got one moving part. You've got a series of rotors that are welded in place, and in the middle is a shaft that has compressor blades on one end and propulsion blades on the other. And they compress the air in the front, put it in a chamber, light it on fire. This blast of hot air goes out the back, provides some thrust, not much these days, it used to be all the thrust. And on the way out, it turns a compressor that keeps the fan going. And it's extremely reliable, which is why we went from 4 engines in the propeller-driven era. And when we started with jets, we decided, well, they're still pretty basically new, so let's build four-engine jets. So the 707, the airplane that really changed the world, Boeing 707. We don't go any faster today than we did when I first took my first flight in 1962. We travel at the same speeds, about 550 miles an hour, round numbers. The 707 was as fast as a modern 737 or 747 within 10, 20 miles an hour. So the 707 had four engines. And after we flew with four engines for quite a while, we decided that we could probably get by with three engines. And so you saw the 727, which has two engines on the back and then one on the tail, and the DC-10 and became the DC-11, the L-1011, all three-engine aircraft. And by the time these things are designed and on the market, we've already got enough data and enough confidence in the high bypass turbofan engine to realize that these monsters produce so much thrust and are so reliable that the chance of you having two engine failures independently is so close to zero that it might as well be zero. It's essentially zero. And the trick of all this, as we found out from the Southwest flight, is this only works under one condition, and it's a very simple condition. This is the same condition you get when you have a twin-engine general aviation airplane. There's no reason to have a second engine on that airplane. It just gives you double the chance of an engine failure. There's no reason to have a second engine on that airplane unless you can fly the whole thing on one engine. And that's why we can get away with two. I do remember that the DC-3, a twin-engine, propeller-driven, regular internal combustion engine, classic airplane, the DC-3, became the C-47. The DC-3 had only two engines, but the DC-3 was so clean aerodynamically, had such a big wing, that it was the first airplane that pilots realized they could train, as they were training, they'd fail one of the engines and they'd be pretty good. So I don't know. I just saw a picture. I didn't know anything about the story. I don't know where the explosion happened. I don't know what part of the flight it happened in and so on. I just don't know. Somebody tell me in a second. But just for your own peace of mind, folks, for those of you maybe not as relaxed about flying as I am or some other people, it's something you need to know, and it's good to know. You are not going to ever fly in an airplane. They will not certify as for passengers any airplane that is not capable of doing the following: fully loaded, at maximum weight, in conditions of thin air and hot air. Any airplane you are going to get into is going to be able to either abort a takeoff, which is a very short period of time to abort a takeoff. You hear that guy put the engines in, or the girl, put the power in, and you start going. You've probably got about 7, 8, 10 seconds, and then after that, you are going flying one way or another. But my point is, if the engine fails very early, they'll abort the takeoff. But if the engine were to fail at the worst possible time, right when you needed the most power to get this airplane off of this runway, the second engine produces enough power to be able to get you into the air safely. You're not going to get anything like the performance you would get with two engines, obviously, but that second engine generates enough power so that you will get in the air and come back and land. You may have to fly around and dump some fuel first, because landings are usually harder on the landing gear than takeoffs are, but you'll keep flying. And that's exactly what happened. It's a fluke. And unless I see a bunch more of them, and you may be seeing something I haven't been seeing, Dave, but they're the most remarkable things in the world. They're just absolutely miraculous, astonishingly powerful and reliable and simple. And if we'd invented the jet engine before the internal combustion engine, and somebody came to somebody with an internal combustion engine, I imagine they'd laugh you right out of the room until you showed them how little fuel it used compared to the jet engine, and then somebody would have your attention, I guess. But yeah, so I'm not aware of any extra failures. If you are one of those people that really, really worries about all the details, there is one thing you can do. Nobody really knows. Look, we haven't had a plane crash in almost 20 years, and not since 2001, so 17 years. Um, but if a plane's going down, it's pretty much the luck of the draw where you're sitting. Usually, probably better to sit in the back, but it's nobody knows. However, if you're one of those people that want to reduce risks as much as possible, you can reduce or eliminate a virtually non-existent risk by not sitting in the plane of the engine's fan. In other words, you got the engine under the wing and the fan is on a plane. You're going forward and the engine spins at an axis that's perpendicular to the motion of travel. So that turbofan is in there spinning very, very high speeds. If something does go wrong with the engine and that thing disintegrates, then the fan blades are going to go all along that arc. They're going to be thrown off along that arc, and some of them will be thrown through the fuselage of the airplane. And I understand somebody was injured pretty severely on that flight, and I'm quite sure that could have only been because when that engine disintegrated, some of the pieces, small number, but some of the pieces departed the engine at high speed and flew into the airframe. So while the chance of an engine failure, most engine failures aren't explosive like that at all. So most engine failures, first of all, they never happen. When they do, they're pretty benign. The engine just shuts down. But theoretically speaking, if you really worry about these things, you can avoid that particular risk by not sitting in the row or two rows that are level with not the front of the engine intake, but where the blade is actually spinning. That's not something I lose any sleep over. Hey, look, it's a new name. How about that? Looks like Alice Idaval. Hi, Alice. South Carolina has put in legislation that if the federal government moves to seize their legally purchased firearms, they will secede from the Union. Did South Carolina do that? South Carolina. I have to say it's kind of awesome this time. Wow. Twice. For those of you that are not up on your history, South Carolina was the state that led the secession and in the Confederacy in Civil War. Putting aside how devastating that would be, yet I would not regret seceding on those grounds one bit. If it came to that, if it happened, who would join South Carolina? ? What would the new nation be called? Should we make the case for claiming we're the true United States? If, heaven forbid, the split is permanent, how would the North American dynamic change if we suddenly find ourselves sitting next to a credible threat? For example, you mentioned something about Russia's motivations were fueled by their fear of invasion. Or on a more likely event, would the left finally realize how puny their country is when 95% of the USA splits off and they find themselves as urban islands in a sea of red? This is a subject we covered on Right Angle, I think. Or maybe it was the members only Right Angle last week, called An Amicable Divorce. It still seems exceedingly unlikely to me that this kind of thing could happen because during the Civil War, we had the kind of tensions that could rip a country apart and did rip a country apart. But those tensions were very largely geographically based. In other words, most everybody who believed in slavery lived in the slave-owning states in the South, and most of the people who were most opposed to slavery lived in the abolitionist states in the Northeast. So when the United States came apart over that issue, some people had to move, but most people were perfectly happy with the split because the slave-owning states left and the northern states stayed, and not a whole lot of people had to pick up and go to the other territory because there weren't that many abolitionists in the South, and there weren't that many slave owners. There weren't any slave owners in the North. It was illegal. The problem now is the country's divided as emotionally as it was in 1861, but we don't have the geographical divide. We all live amongst each other. The people we want to get away from are people who are either in front of us in traffic or standing next to us in the elevator or so on, which is part of the reason why I think it's actually an enormous tragedy, but I certainly feel it. When we mentioned it, somebody, I'm sorry I missed it, but somebody said I'd go to South Carolina. I'm beginning to suspect I would too. This thing seemed absolutely impossible to me prior to Donald Trump's election. But there's a serious move to get California out of the union. We could only be so lucky. We'd lose a very big economy. I think California is still the 7th or 8th biggest economy in the world on its own. So we'd lose a big part of the economy, but all the liberals that are talking about California seceding from the union, if only California were to secede from the union, the Democrats would never win another election again. They start the race with a fifth, almost a quarter in the bank. They start every race a quarter of the way there in the bank. They've got 50 electoral votes from California, and of the 270 you need, 50 is a big hunk. If California were to leave the union and those 50 electoral votes were to go with them, the Democrats would have a much harder time. And if California were to leave the union, had left the union in the 2016 election, Donald Trump not only would have won the election by a much wider margin in terms of the way we judge elections, which is through electoral votes, but I believe he also would have won the popular vote. I think he would have won the popular vote because I think California's heavy, enormous population is so heavily blue is what actually put Hillary over the top on the popular vote. So whether or not this is feasible, I don't know. But it's fun to talk about if it was feasible. It's absolutely true if you look at a map of the United States and you go to a much finer resolution than state by state. Instead of seeing this blocky thing where it's blocky blue and blocky red, you find exactly what you said, that the continent is this pretty much blood red from coast to coast. The entire American continent is red with large blue dots among it. And these are the high population centers in the city. So that's another problem. All the city people we're generalizing obviously, but most of the city people would want to stay with the rest of the progressives. And those cities are dispersed in an enormous sea of red. And I guess that's kind of what you're saying. How would they like it if they woke up surrounded by all of this territory? I'm at the point now, and I know many people are at the point now, where if a state were to secede from the Union and take the Constitution with it, and actually obey the Constitution. In other words, if there was a conservative state that left the Union over conservative principles, I'd have to have a little discussion with this Russian girl I know, but I'm virtually certain that I would move there, because I suspect that one state alone would in a very short time become a serious economic competitor to the others. We were doing our right angle show today. One of Steve Green's topic was that we don't. Somebody had written that we don't pay enough in taxes. Liberal, imagine. And he's talking about the advanced economies of the world all pay 34%, and we only pay 26% or whatever the amount was, but something like that. He was talking about. This left-winger was talking about the advanced economies of the world. Here's what the advanced economies of the world do not like the savage barbarians that we have here. And this is a point I made on the show. I'll make it now, and I think that's going to do it, guys. I'm sorry I didn't get to more of them, but a lot of other stuff. So here's what's interesting about that argument. It goes to the idea, when I make the case, it goes to the idea about this independence state idea. So these are 2015 data. I guess it's the latest data we have, like really completely solid numbers on. So let's look at what the advanced economies, the European economies, the socialist economies, the Scandinavian socialism economies. Let's see what incredible economic miracles they're performing, shall we? So we can all go galloping in that direction. Well, it turns out if you look at the 10 biggest economies in the world, backward, primitive, savage, coarse, gun-toting America. Oh, look, it's first with, again, 2015 figures, $18 trillion in GDP. And it turns out the 5% of us that make up the world population is 5% Americans. produce 24.3% of all of the world's economic output. So we're basically producing at 5 times our population share. Not great with statistics, but that's a general idea. So surely the economically advanced countries of Scandinavia must be next, right? No, it turns out it's not. Second is China. We produce 18 trillion. They produce 11 children. 11 trillion. Although it is about children, it's probably a Freudian slip. So the United States produces 24% of the world economy. China produces 14%. 15, really. They've got 4 times our population, and they produce about half, maybe a little more than half of what we produce. And they're just a communist state-run totalitarian slave machine. Now, the first really kind of socialist state you run into is the number 3 economy in the world, which is Japan. At 4.4 trillion, Japan produces almost 6% of the world economy. The problem with Japan is Japan used to be second, and Japan's share of the world economy continues to shrink because the Japanese are very good at making pretty much everything except for other Japanese. That seems to be the one thing that they can't get their arms around. So Japan is in a demographic death spiral. Japan, interestingly enough, has decided not to import other people to become new Japanese and have their country change under their feet. So rather than Japan evolving into Algeria, Japan is simply just getting so old that there won't be anybody in Japan anymore. So you can count on Japan's market share getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Germany, there you go. So here's a relatively socialistic country. 3.4 trillion, they make up less than 5% of the world population. United Kingdom makes up 4%. France makes up a little over 3%. India is almost 3%. Italy's 2.5%. So is Brazil. And our civilized, socialized, advanced economic neighbors in the north in Canada produce 2% of the world's population, GDP. They make less than 10% of what America makes. America makes 10 times what Canada does. Now you could say we have 10 times as many people, but I don't care about that. That's not relevant to the argument. So it's interesting, isn't it, that this left-wing communist is talking about the backward economy, the more advanced economies. When what he really should be saying, and there's no doubt about it, I mean, the graph is right here. We can talk about the advanced economy of the United States, or we can talk about the backward economies of the socialist countries that are doing 5% of what we do, or something like that. That point is interesting. And there's another point, and this is the point I was trying to make. The United States is the biggest economy in the world, $18 trillion in 2015 of GDP, gross domestic product, and we make about 25%, about a quarter of the world's economy. And that's America fighting with both hands and both feet tied. In other words, the enormous lead that America has in terms of manufacturing output and muscle and efficiency, economic muscle, that's with all of these taxes and all of these regulations. That's with this unbelievably heavy burden that we put on ourselves. It's like we're half again faster than the fastest runner on the track, and we are carrying a couple of anvils, one on each shoulder, and we're still cleaning everybody's clocks. If you were to get all of this taxation and regulations out of here, we'd be producing, I don't know, half easily of the world's economic output. If we were to become the country we were that made us this rich, back when we were rich, before we became the poorest country in the world, we went back to the same general size government as a proportion, the same general size spending as a proportion, same regulations as a proportion, we wouldn't be making $18 trillion of GDP. We'd be making $50 trillion of GDP. And as A.R. Simon says, hey, I like the A.R. there. Simon says, you awesome dude. We're doing all of this while we're paying for the defense of Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Italy, and Canada. So it's the United States, we're paying for our own defense. China pays for its own defense. United States pays for most of Japan's defense, most of Germany's defense, most of the UK's defense. We pay for a significant part of France's defense. Don't pay much for India. We pay all of Italy's defense. We don't do much for Brazil, but we pay all of Canada's defense. So we're carrying that burden as well. And the reason that I get so torqued about this is because if South Carolina were to, or Texas, or any place else were to secede from the Union and basically go to the kind of structure that allowed us to become so successful in the first place, then I would move there to bring the full weight and impact of the BillWhittle.com economy with me, because I think that whichever state left the Union would rapidly become, if it left under the terms of genuine free market and pro-business legislation, I think that one state would rapidly begin to outpace. First, they'd outpace California, and then they'd outpace the rest of the country. And I think it'd be awesome, frankly. You can give me any state you want to, even someplace that sucks like Arkansas or something. The only reason I say that is I seem to remember a new wave song that had a lyric, and send me off to Arkansas or someplace else that sucks. But if you were to have one state that was very limited, flat federal tax, or state tax, you don't have a federal anymore, and you got regulations out of the way, I think you would find yourself living in the most prosperous, cleanest state on the continent, and more people would go there, and it would become more and more successful. And as all of the producers and all of the hardworking people and the smart people, but mostly the hardworking people, left to go to this one place, the states they left behind would lose their power plants, their economic, spiritual power plants, and they would collapse ever the faster. And as soon as that happened, all of the liberals that live in these places would all of a sudden move to South Carolina because of the superb economic opportunities provided therein. And as soon as they got to South Carolina, they'd start voting like Californians, and they'd screw up South Carolina. That's why, if any kind of a secession like that happens, you better make damn sure that you write a law that says that what happens to your new country doesn't happen to the state of Texas, which is namely, we have a legislature that meets once every 2 years for a couple of weeks. We stay out of people's way. We have very low taxes, a lot of room, pro-business, incredible booming economy. So far, so good. But then people from absurd economies like California move to Texas. Again, so far, so good. And then they start voting like Californians and do everything they can to ruin the economic climate that drew them there in the first place, because that's how stupid progressives are. They're that stupid. I think that's going to do it for me. I've got a couple of thumbnails I need to do for Right Angle before I head home, and gone for another couple of days, but then we're back, and we're looking at kind of a sort of kind of an emotional and moral restart on Monday, the 23rd of April. A lot of traveling behind us. A lot of things have been, worked out one way or another, and we're going to try and get back on the horse, get back to basics, and start again, and try to, bless you, Simon says, and we'll stay in it. We're as worried as I was, as terrified as I was with all of this stuff, and I still am. I do remember being in Hawaii and just looking at this whole thing from above and saying, all right, if we have to handwrite out these things and share them under newspapers on bus seats, we'll samizdat the entire thing. We'll just make these Soviet underground publications. We're never going away. And we're never going to stop fighting you, you miserable, low-life communist bastards who have nothing else to do but tell other people how to live their lives. We're not going anywhere. We're just going to have to fight a lot smarter than we're fighting now. Okay, that'll do it. So thanks very much for joining us. I think I'm here next week. Don't see any reason why we can't be back next week. I'm now going to hit the 7 or 8 buttons that I need to hit to stop this whole thing. And there's one of them. So there it is. So, again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week on episode number 182. Today, 183 next time. We'll see you. Bye bye.